Good morning. This is Mr. Fisher again. Obviously, you're in algebra. Today is probably one of the most important days of the whole year. We're doing slope-intercept form. And rather than making T-charts and plugging numbers in like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, doing a lot of math, getting answers, and then plotting those points, today we're going to just use the equation to make a graph. And so sometimes kids have done a little bit of this in the junior high. Again, I'm not sure because of fourth quarter last year, we're on COVID. And so some kids missed that whole fourth quarter and stopped working. Some kids continued on through with the work they were supposed to do. And probably this was one of the lessons that they should have touched on lightly. So today's a very, very important day because we want to be able to graph linear lines very, very quickly. Okay, so I have the warm-up answers on the next page. So pause your video, do the warm-ups, and then let's get started on today. All right, welcome back. So here we should go. I'm looking at B as my y-intercept because if I have a 0 for my x, that means don't go left or right, but go up 4, and that's where my coordinate would be, and it'd be right on the y-axis. That's a very important word for today is the y-intercept. Y-intercept means where is this line going to cross the y-axis? And so that's going to help us on the y equals mx plus b. Down here on number 2, we got some fractions. And so they're not going to go away. We just need to be able to manipulate them around and use them. The goal was to get the y by itself. You could have had y equals 1 1/3 plus, then minus 1/3 x, but I'm trying to keep this into what we call the y equals mx plus b form. So that's how you'll see my answers written. And after today, you'll kind of understand that a little bit more because it's easier to graph if it's in the y equals mx plus b form. Problem number 3, you could have left it as y equals 1.5 x minus 3.5. I made it into decimals, but the big part is you should have divided everything by a -2. And a -3 divided by a -2 is a positive 1.5. Positive 7 divided by a -2 is a -3.5. So being able to do this work quickly is very, very important. Number 4, we had to plug in the 4. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 10 is 18, so that I'm hoping was a very easy problem for you. And then I put parentheses around the -9 because that negative sign, when I put it in for x, goes with the 9. The other kind of problem that you would have is something like this, that if it said, a lot of kids want to do this on their calculator. If a math problem said that without parentheses, or they didn't say plug in the 9, well, right now that math problem says that 2 only goes to the 9. But if I put it in parentheses like that, then it's a -9 times a -9. Again, we need to really be able to distinguish between the two, okay? So there you should have took the -9 times -9. Here we're going to be working with linear lines today. We're going to work with linear lines now for all the way up to Christmas. Linear just means a straight line. So we're going to be writing linear equations, which if we have a graph, it's really easy for me to write an equation. You'll do that today. And then we're talking about slope-intercept form. This is very, very important. It's y equals mx plus b. And as we go through today, at the end, we should know what these parts are. We already know m stands for my slope, but what's this b guy over here? Okay, so here we are. Here's a real life problem that we're going to try solving at the end here once we learn how to do this. If you're going to rent a truck, like from U-Haul or something, usually you go in and they say, okay, you're going to have to pay like $150 to rent the truck, and then you pay per mile. And so we want to be able to write an equation and graph what it's going to cost to go a certain amount of distance, especially if the distance isn't on my graph. So you have seen that you can graph a line if you know 2 points on the line. Another way to use the slope of a line in the point that contains the y-intercept. Y-intercept means where is it going to cross my y-axis. And so like in this problem, if they said my slope is a -2, and Y-intercept is 4. Well, Y-intercept means where's it going to cross my Y-axis, this line? Well, it's going to cross at a positive 4 right there. So I can put a dot there. Now my slope is a negative, so in my head I'm thinking my line better be heading in a downward fashion as I read from left to right. If there is no denominator, what we do is we put a 1 over it. So negative 2 over 1 is the same as negative 2. So from the dot on my y-intercept, if I go down 1, 2 units over 1, down 1, 2 over 1, and usually we do 3 dots, then I can draw my line. So with your ruler, which now everybody has a ruler at school, so that's kind of nice. You should be using a ruler too. We can draw our line. Now, on my iPad here, it's a little bit harder for me to get my line exact because I can't figure out how to move my line once I draw it. I'd like to kind of scoot this guy up a little bit. So you're just going to have to bear with me. I want to talk to another math teacher today to see how when I have those little dots on there, how can I move that line to get it better. All right, so anyhow, your slope should look like that. Important things is make sure you have arrows on both ends. And your graph or your line should extend out to just a little bit beyond the edge of the graph. All right, not just a little line in the middle. All right, so let's give it a shot here. Do these two, and I have my answers on the next page. So give it a shot, and let's see how we do. All right, so a couple things before I show you the next page that I'm thinking about. If I see a 2 here, that's a positive slope. So my line on my next graph better be heading in an upwards fashion like that. Over here, I have a negative slope. So on my next graph, on the next page here, it better be heading downwards. Get in the habit of predicting which way my line should go. Let's see how I did. And there it is. Now it's very important. When we look, sometimes on graphing, and I'll say on your Google form, well, what was your y-intercept? And you would tell me it was a negative 3. And then I would say, well, what was your slope of your graph? So sometimes when we're graphing and I can't have you show me your graph, I'll just ask you those two important parts. Okay? They gave them to us, so now we're graphing. So from there, negative 3 is where my y-intercept. So if I went up 2 over 1, I made a dot. Up 2 over 1, made a dot. Over here I had a negative slope, but my y-intercept was at 1. So I went down 2, 1, 2, 3 over, down 2, 1, 2, 3 over. Now you could also go this way. You could go up 3 and to the left 2. Sometimes we have to do that to keep it on our graph paper. I could go up 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and you would see it still falls on the line. So that negative sign is fluid. It can either go to the numerator or the denominator. We can move it from one to the other. Now, this is where some math is going to come in here. This first problem is kind of weird because I'll show you. They said, here's the deal. If you know the slope of a line and the y-intercept, you can write an equation to describe the line. If the line has a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of 3, then m equals 2, and our coordinate is 0, 3. This is my y-intercept. This is my x. This is my y, like on our practice warm-up problem today. So what they are suggesting that you do here is that you do this. Instead of an m, you put in a 2. So we have 2 equals y sub 2, which I don't know, minus y sub 1, which was this 3 up here, over x sub 2, which we don't know, minus x sub 1, which was 0. So now if we continue solving that, well, x sub 2 minus 0, I'm just going to call it x, still is x. Y minus 3 is still my numerator. I'm going to get rid of my sub numbers. And I have 2. Now to get rid of my x, I need to multiply both sides by 2. And my x's over here cancels out. So on this side, I have 2x equals y minus 3. I'm going to add 3 because I want to get the y by itself. So now I got a y by itself equals 2x plus 3. And I want to flip that whole equation because I like it in the y equals mx plus b form. So that is the very best answer. Okay. Now, if we are told the same thing, and I was reading this problem and I know about y equals mx plus b, I can make my work a whole lot easier. Here's the important parts. Please write this. This is my slope. We know that. Nothing new there. That's my slope. Now, this B here is a guy that we always need in order to graph. This is your Y-intercept. The B here, all right? So if they told me the same problem, rather than doing all this math that they just showed you over here, here's what I would do. I would say, okay, they want me to write an equation, y equals, they told me the slope in the problem, they said it has a slope of 2. So I'm going to write 2x. They also told me the y-intercept is 3, a positive 3. And I'm done. Okay, so sometimes we have to do some math. You'll see in a little bit here where they just didn't give me the y-intercept of 3. They gave me a different coordinate. We'll have to do some math. But notice that I got the same equation, but a whole lot faster because I know what the m means and the b means. All right? All right, so there it is. Y equals mx plus b form. Very, very, very important in algebra. Okay, so again, here they're giving me the slope. They give me the y-intercept. So if they want me to write it in an equation, and then I'm going to say, hey, here we go. Y equals, instead of m, I'm going to put a 1/3 because they said that's my slope. There's always going to be an x, and my y-intercept is 6. If they said write a function for this, then I would just say f of x equals 1/3 x minus 6, because f of x and y are the same thing. This over here is a little bit weird because we have a 0 slope. I can still write it that way, 0x minus 5. Now, we get lazy in math. So when we have 0 times x, we just will shortcut it and say minus 5. Now think about that. If I have a 0 slope, we talked about this for the last couple of days, a 0 slope means it's a horizontal line. Okay, if I was graphing that. My y-intercept means at -5, and so even though we're not graphing this yet, if I was asked to graph this, and we will here in a little bit, I see my y-intercept is -5. And so I would come down here and say, okay, there's -5. Let's just pretend that's -5. And I would draw a horizontal line on that. No math involved. Okay, so if I don't see an x, there really is an x. It's just a 0x minus 5, so don't freak out. Sometimes writing it in that form helps us on the graphing, okay? I love it when they give me a graph and say, write me an equation. Rather than the guessing and checking like we had to do earlier this year, saying what numbers work, well, I'm just going to say y equals, let's find my slope. They gave a graph here, so I'm not even going to use the slope formula. I want to go up 2 over 1. So my slope is 2 over 1. I want to write it there, 2x. I could write 2 over 1, same thing. I know now my b is my y-intercept. And so I look for my y-intercept where my line crosses the y-axis, and right there it is. It's a +1. So my equation for that graph is y equals 2x plus 1. Now this is where you're going to have to do some math. So watch closely here because we're going to do this often. So we go back to my y equals mx plus b. That's our goal in writing equations. I got my slope, so that's good, but I don't have my b. So I'm going to have to do some math to do my b. Now here's what we're going to do. This is my x, this is my y value for that coordinate. So what I'm going to do is I want to use this formula here to help me find my b. Because I have my m, I have an x, and I have a y. So if I plug all those numbers in for this, the only thing I don't have is my b. So let's plug these numbers in the right place. They said the y is 5, equals, my slope is 4, x is going to be my x value in my coordinate, which is 2, and I'm just going to put plus b. Now, let's solve for this. This is 8, so I have 8 plus b on this side, and 5. I got to get that 8 to the other side. So now I have this thing called b equals -3. I need this and this in order to write my equation. Two things all the time to write an equation. I need my slope and my y-intercept. So let's go write my equation. Y equals 4x, which they gave me the slope. And then I solve for my b, and it's a -3. Now if I graph that, that line will definitely go through 0.25. Okay. All right. So now you have 3 to try. So pause your video and give it a shot, and let's see how we did. Again, on number 2C, you're going to have some math to do. Okay. All right. All right. Let's see how you did. I got y equals negative 12x minus 1/2. You could have said minus 0.5. That would be okay. Over on 2b, they said the slope was 1x. Most of the time now, that as you get older, you would just say y equals x, because we know there's a 1 in front of that. And we had a plus 0, so you could say plus 0. That's my y-intercept. But you could also write it this way. So again, if I see an equation like this and they ask me to graph it, I'm not going to freak out, because what this is saying is my y-intercept is really at 0. So right here, it's 0, 0 is where that line is going to go through. And then I would go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, because that's my slope, and I would draw my line. Okay? So sometimes just in algebra, we kind of try to keep things short. Okay? So here we go. Let's do some graphing equations from slope-intercept form. So this is my y-intercept. This is what I love. Instead of plugging all those numbers in like a t-chart saying, let's put negative 2 in. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. Ugh, drives me crazy. We can just do it quickly if we know about y equals mx plus b form. I want to put a dot on negative 3. It's a positive slope, so in my head I'm thinking my line should be going in an upwards fashion because it's a positive 4. Now I'm going to put a 1 over that because I'm going to go up, rise over run, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. I'm going to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. The law in algebra usually is to make 3 dots, and they all should fall in a line. Okay. I encourage you to continue making 3 dots, because if you don't and you make 2, sometimes you won't know if you made a slight mistake in your rise and run. So I want to get it as best I can. That one wasn't so bad. So there's my graph for that one. Let's go do another one. So now over here, here's my y-intercept. It's a 2, so I want to put a dot on 2. I have a negative slope, so again, in my head, I'm predicting that my line should be going downward in a downward fashion. So now I'm going to go down. I want to sign it this way, negative 2 over 3. So I want to go down 2, 1, 2, 3 over. Down 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 over. Now I could also go in this fashion. I could say, let's go up 2 and left 3. If I went up 2, 1, 2, and left 3, 1, 2, 3, I still fall in that same line there. So now let's draw our line. Oops, get rid of that one. I guess I didn't pick my shape here. All right, let's try this again. Again, you should draw your graph from one side to the other. Arrows should go on both ends because that line extends forever in those directions. All right. Pretty soon we'll have to start because we're going to get more than one equation. So then what we would do is we'd say y equals minus 2/3 x plus 2 is the name of that line right there, so that we can identify which line is which. Okay. All right. Not sure what that dot is. Bugs me. All right. We got another one here. Now I recognize that that one's in standard form. So the first thing I do is if I see it in standard form, here's my x's, here's my y's, here's my units. I look, y-intercept would be easy because I'd divide both sides by our x-intercept, because I'd divide both sides by a 2 and that'd be 4, but 3 doesn't go into 8. It's a fraction. So my next step is, if that didn't work, and we already learned that, let's put it into the y equals mx plus b form. So I'm going to subtract 3 x's from both sides. And then I'm going to divide by 2. Make sure you divide everything by 2. You got y equals, I want to leave this as a fraction because that's really my slope. And 8 divided by 2 is a positive 4. Now that it's in the y equals mx plus b form, I can easily come over here and graph this. Again, I don't want to have to keep making charts. It's a negative slope, so my line better be heading down. I want to go down 1, 2, 3. over 1, 2. 1, 2, 3 over 2. I want to go up. Nope, I can't go up 1, 2, 3 because I'm off the graph. Uh-oh, that doesn't look right. I didn't go over 2, did I? But you see how they're not making a nice linear line? That's why we do 3 dots. All right, so I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now they look like they're going into a nice straight line. So we'll see how I do on my line here. Dang. All right. So anyhow, with a ruler on paper, you should be a lot closer than that. I'm a little off down here, but what am I going to do? I'll figure it out. All right. I think you got some try. You got 3 of them there to do. So pause your video, do those 3, and then let's see how you did. All right, let's see how you did. This is where kind of math gets a little bit more fun because I'm drawing lines and things like that. So here I had a plus 0, so that means it goes through the y-intercept is 0. So I mentioned that earlier, so I hope you caught on to that. This one I had some work to do because 6 doesn't go into 10. So even though it's in standard form, that strategy didn't work. So I'm going to go to strategy number 2 to graph. And that's put it into y equals mx plus b form. So down here is where I was all done putting it into the y equals mx plus b form. My y-intercept was 5. I went down 3 over 1 and got my graph. On 3C, that really is like we were talking earlier. There's an x there. We just get lazy in algebra or save some lead. It's 0x, so that means it's a 0 slope. So again, the last couple of days I was kind of hounding on you, saying 0 slope is a horizontal line, undefined would be a vertical line. So here's my y-intercept, -4, so I made a dot on -4, and a 0 slope would go left and right. Okay, you could make a t-chart. If you said -2, well, -2 times 0 is 0, -4. 2 times 0 is still 2, and a -4. So you would see, no matter where I am, -2, 0, 2, 0, I can get a dot. So if you're not sure about doing it, just make a t-chart. T-charts always work. That's why they teach us it. All right, so here we are now, about wrapping things up. Here's our renting a van. Now, they charge 50 cents a mile, and as they walk in the door, the first thing they're going to say is, give me 30 bucks. You can walk off this parking lot with the van if you give me 30 bucks, and then we're going to check your mileage when you get back, and we're going to charge you 50 cents a mile. So they graphed it over there for you, but we kind of already have some things in mind here. I know I need to write my equation in the y equals mx plus b form. And if I look over at my graph, I see some critical things. I already see my y-intercept. It's a plus 30. I can also find my slope over there if I get rid of my green line. I'm going to look for 2 dots. 30 is a good one. And as I'm going along here, I see a dot right there that's a pretty good one. So I went up 10 over 20. So my slope was 10 over 20. I went up 10, I went over 20, which is the same as a half. Okay, now if you think about it, look at our problem up here. They said you're charging 30 bucks as you walk in the door. That's my y-intercept if I didn't have the graph. They said they're charging you 50 cents a mile. Isn't that the same as a half? Okay, so my equation is going to be 0.5 or 1/2 x, either one, plus 30. Now, this is the very important part. We've been working on this. Identify the slope. Our slope is a half. You could write m, or 50 cents. Well, what does that mean? Well, I don't need the graph. The slope is 50 cents. So if I went 2 miles, I'm going to owe $1. If I went 4 miles, I'm going to owe $2. So the slope, what does it mean? They charge 50 cents per mile. Now, like we were practicing yesterday, if I got this fraction, I want to do it up here. If I said 1 over 2 and we kept harping about, hey, get your units down to a unit rate. So if I got this down to 1, that would be 50 cents, 0.5 over 1. And then we'd come over to our chart here and say, okay, my x-axis is my distance. miles. My y-axis is total dollars. And so again, writing this into words down here, 50 cents per mile. Okay, now let's go to my y-intercept. They said, well, what does that mean? Y-intercept, which was 30, means they charge $30 setup fee or something like that, starting fee. I want to say starting fee. That means I walk in the door, like the math problem said, I went 0 miles, but I could go in and pay my $30 and say I'm renting that van out there and not even take it for a drive, just walk off. I don't know why you would do that, but I went 0 miles. They said, thank you for your $30. That would be kind of strange, but I guess it could happen, but that's what that means. All right, so now that we have our equation, which was up there, y equals 0.5x plus 30, we can now plug this number in of 150 because 150 is not on my graph. It only goes up to about, 30, 40, 50. It goes only to 50 miles. We want to go 150 miles. So we just plug that number into our equation. 0.5, this is my miles. And they said, now we're going to go 150 miles plus 30. All right, so let's do 150 times 5. That would, half of 150 would be, 75? So then 75 plus 30. Y equals 105. Now we have to put it in words. It's a word problem. If you go 150 miles, it would cost you, what do we end up with? $105? $105. All right, so this is now the high school algebra part. Now I can write a graph, or equation from a graph. I can graph it. I can tell you what all those things mean. Currently, I'm trying to do this kind of a problem right now. I'm trying to rent a motor home to go to California to take care of some business over Thanksgiving break. And I'm trying to rent the motor home, and they says, hey, you rent a motor home, you got to pay $1 cleanup fee. You have to pay all these fees up front. Cleaning the inside's $100. Cleaning the outlet side was $75. It's like I pay that whether I drive it or not. So that's kind of like the setup fee. And then they're going to charge me so much per mile when I go over that way. So here's the one for you to try. Give it a shot. Pause the video. It's going to take some time. Here's a caterer. They charge $200 fee up front. So you walk in and say, I want to use your services. Well, they have to spend some time with you talking about things, how many people's coming. And so they're going to say, well, this come talk to you is going to be $200. And then we're going to charge you $18 per person that we have as guests. So work your way through that. Pause your video and then come on back and let's see how you did. All right, so here we go. This one, I didn't even need to graph, but it's over there. There's my y-intercept, 200, but I could also go up here and say they pay this flat fee one time, $200. And then they're going to charge me $18 a person. That's my slope. So 2 people come, I get $36. 4 people come, it's whatever that is, $72. Anyhow, so there's my equation. Very, very important. What does my slope mean? M equals 18 is my slope. So I identified it, that it costs $18 per person. Again, if you just come back up to the problem up here, we don't even need the graph in those y-axes, okay? It really would be 18 over 1. This is my dollars. This is my people. People's on the x-axis. Dollars is on my y-axis. The y-intercept means it has a flat fee of $200. We talked about that extensively. So now that I have my equation, they said, well, what happens if 200 people come to my party? Well, I'll take 200 times 18, which is 3,600 plus 200. I get $3,800. So that's what we have today. It's going to take me a little while to get the answer, the Google form, to turn it in, but you can do your practice sheet. But I should have the Google form up for you to turn and grade and turn in your work. Now, a lot of kids are, interestingly enough, getting perfect papers on all their assignments over the last couple of days, which kind of makes me a little nervous because, again, I don't see very many kids watching the video. And so I don't want to elude that maybe possibly you are just cheating. I hope not, because tomorrow's quiz is not multiple choice. You're going to have to do the quiz. You're going to take a photo of your front page and you're going to turn that in. And then the second one will say take a photo of your second page and turn that one in. And so it's going to be one that I grade. So make sure you're very clear on the quiz tomorrow. Make sure your quiz is done by 3. It'll probably take me a little bit longer to get that done because I'll have to print off your papers. But that's the way we're going to take this quiz this week. So I hope you are really keeping up, learning the material that you're responsible for learning, so that not only can you do better in the future, but you can do well on the quiz that's for tomorrow. All right. Well, have a good day. We'll talk to you later, tomorrow probably.